Hello and welcome to Addictions, the podcast about addictions. I'm your host, David Wagner. Today we have a very special show for you. It is going to be the first in a monthly segment called Confessions of a Drug User. Each month I'll go around and interview a current drug user and see what they have to say about addiction and pretty much everything else. Our guest today has seen the dirty underbelly of addiction up close and personal. He offers some valuable insight into the subject. He has chosen to remain anonymous, so we will just leave it at that. Due to the stigma surrounding addiction, this is not uncommon. I do want to say that the audio in this interview sounds a little bit different because I was away from the studio and had to use my iPhone to record this interview. It's still highly listenable, so please enjoy. Enough of my yakking, let's get to it. You've lived in this area pretty much your whole life, haven't you?
Other than like 2 years in Lansing, yeah.
Yeah. So you've kind of seen what's been going on in regards to the widespread addiction problems, not only in this area, but
epidemic.
Nationwide, really, yeah.
I feel like it's worse around here, man.
Yeah, there's studies that show that rural areas and areas where there's a lot of poverty typically see higher rates of addiction and stuff, and that's generally...
It's because we don't have anything better to do, man.
There's nothing to do, and people get depressed, people get bored, whatever. Those things all contribute. In this area, it's mainly opiates and alcohol, I would say. The two big ones.
I think it goes in the order of opiates, alcohol, and then meth.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of meth around here, which is not a good thing. I've actually had friends, you probably know a couple of them who have went down that road.
Yep, I've known some people I've met, like, while they're on probation because of it, hang out, they're clean, and then they get off probation, then it's like they're right back to the shit, man.
Exactly.
And fucking in and out of jail,
What's your opinion on addiction? And the my last episode was a lot about addiction being a disease, and I firmly believe, and I've looked at the research and the evidence that addiction is a disease of the brain. What's your take on that?
Well, yeah, it's a disease. I mean, yeah, it's because of the choices that you've made most of the time, but yeah, I mean, so is AIDS,
Yeah, if you choose to have unprotected sex, that's a riskier take.
Right. You decide to take some pills, you're not thinking about the consequences. Generally, you're young and you're like, oh, this is going to be fun.
What really blows me away about a lot of people in this area, and I'm sure it's the same probably wherever you go, but what really blows me away is the lack of compassion people have. It's like they just want to hate people that have addiction problems.
Yeah, it's sad, man.
Yeah.
People are always like, oh, yeah, fuck that, let the junkie die, don't help them.
Exactly.
They never think that could be their brother or their daughter.
Or their child, man.
Yeah.
And yes, there is choice involved, but in the same token, you can't judge every addict the same, because there are addicts out there who had very little choice, and they're just doing what they've been told.
Right, you got people like you get fucked up in a car accident, no choice of their own.
You're in pain, you want relief.
Ton of drugs.
Exactly, and before you know it, you're halfway down that slippery slope that is addiction. And I think that's one of the biggest problems, and that stigma, that negative characteristic that everyone slams onto addicts. I personally think that is also part of the reason a lot of drug addicts are afraid to come forward and admit to everyone and say, look, I have a problem, I need help.
Yeah, they can't
because
get help because they know that 90% of the people they know are going to ostracize
exactly.
All that shit, man. It's sad.
Yeah, it's total bullshit.
Like, a lot of people never get help until they're forced to through the courts, and by then, it's generally too late. Not too late, but I mean, it's
Well,
so
sometimes-
much harder by then.
Sometimes it is too late. People die, man.
Yeah, true, but I mean, by then, most likely you've got a criminal record, which is going to have something to do with drugs on your record.
And that's going to follow you throughout your life.
Never going to stop. You're going to mess up your chances of getting a decent job. Any job you do get is going to be full of like-minded individuals that are going to be like, all right, cool, let's go get high, and you're gonna try your damnedest not to.
Exactly. See, this is one of the biggest reasons I wanted to do this podcast was there's just so much information out there that is completely false that people keep perpetuating and keep, passing it on and spreading it around, and that is one of the biggest problems. Even government officials that are in power see addiction that way, and hence they're incredibly leery about putting a lot of federal money into helping combat the opioid problem or just the addiction problem in general. And I think that's a really big stumbling block, but it's starting to look like that is kind of starting to change in our government, hopefully.
We're starting to realize it's cheaper
Yeah.
to help these addicts than to throw them in prison.
In the long run, it's incredibly cheaper. Well, think about this. Our government spends $500 billion annually on just defense spending. That's like $2 billion. There's, 365 days in a year, right? $500 billion a year. So that's almost $2 billion a day that we spend on the fucking
Just military defense.
Yeah, just defense.
Wow.
You could cut that in, just a fraction of that money
Just take like 100,000 of that a day.
could do so much good for this problem. And they spend it like it's nothing, And I hate to get political on the show, but
They're
that
just
is a
spending
fact.
money on toys for the troops to play with
Exactly.
90% of the time. We don't need half that shit.
No. I agree with you 100% there, man. Another thing I wanted to talk about was how widespread this really is, because a lot of people are totally blind to the fact that addiction is everywhere. I've known so many people, and I'm sure you have too, who have fallen prey to addiction. And it's not just with drugs, addiction, you can be addicted to a lot of things. Coffee, television, sex,
Cell phone.
One thing that I always thought was kind of funny was how our society looks at certain addictions as being okay, not a problem, and then other addictions as, so you're fucked up, you're less than human now, But if you're jonesing for a coffee, that's cool.
All right, because you can get that at the convenience store, man. Of course, you can get your heroin and your crack or what have you outside of the convenience
True,
store.
yeah.
But you're not paying taxes with it. I mean, then they got the taxes that they get from people getting busted and all that shit.
Well, again, going back to how widespread this whole bullshit is I was reading some statistics about it, and I think it was at the end of 2011, might have been 2012. It was estimated that there was over 20.6 million people addicted to either drugs or alcohol in this country. That's not counting cigarettes. But
That's counting drugs or alcohol and illegal drugs.
Yeah. Then the same study was showing that at the end of 2016, that number had doubled to over 40 million people. There's 300 and some odd million people in this country.
You say in the span of a year?
No, that's from, I believe, the end of 2012 to 2016. So about 4 years it doubled.
Right on.
Slightly more than doubled. But in a country of 320-some million people, 40 million is a decent fraction of the population.
A little over a tenth, right?
Yeah. So you could almost figure
One in 10 people has an addiction problem.
But probably in isolated areas that is probably considerably more. Maybe like 1 in 4, 1 in 5.
Around here in Montcalm County, man, these days I'm honestly more surprised when I meet somebody who doesn't have an addiction problem.
Yeah.
I mean, that might just be my fucking circle, but...
Well, when you boil it down, I mean, even my mom, she's still addicted to caffeine. She'll drink coffee all day long, right before she goes to bed. I do the same. I'm addicted to caffeine as well. But according to society, that's okay, and it's not going to destroy my relationships with people. But that's still an addiction, if you want to get technical.
Thing is, man, like it's weird how the stigma works.
It is.
Something like caffeine and alcohol. Everybody's used them for so long.
Yep.
People have used things like, heroin and cocaine for a really long time.
The alcohol thing is really wild because
So I think a lot of that is you can only grow heroin and cocaine in certain areas.
Yeah.
You can make...
and it takes some skill to refine those products down into the finished product.
Right. You can't just... Well, you can, but...
Some people can. Oh yeah. If you want to, you can. But it takes a little work and some know-how.
One thing I always thought was weird is, like, you got somebody like me who's, used some of the most addictive substances on the planet for weeks at a time. Then, I'll cut myself off towards the end of it, start getting broke. It's like, I'm not going to go suck a dick or rob anybody, so I'm just going to deal with the withdrawal. Really, it's like a really bad hangover that lasts for a couple days.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying you should go out and see if you can tolerate that, but...
No, and everyone's different, but there's definitely something to what you're saying. It's in casual use, or semi-casual use, or semi-regular use. It's not too bad, and I can vouch for that. Like you were saying, like the first few times I was really abusing opioid narcotics, I'd go on like a 3-day bender and then be off of it for a few days. And the first couple of days, it's like a bad hangover, like you said, and for a while I was confused and I couldn't figure out exactly why I was feeling sick.
Right. You never felt sick.
I never thought it was the drugs.
You didn't think of yourself as an addict. You didn't realize it was withdrawals. You're just like,
no.
Wow, my intestines are really
what is going on,
What
man?
did I eat?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's pretty wild that you say that.
My
because
head feels like somebody kicked me, but I don't remember getting kicked.
But I think a lot of people start out that way, and it just kind of snowballs and it gets worse and worse with the length of time they use.
Right.
Once you get to like a point where you're going a month straight using.
Like, I still remember the first few times that I, took anything stronger than like a Norco or a Vicodin, when I was younger. Early teens, it's like, all right, cool, take a couple Vicodin or Norco, whatever it was.
Be
at
high
the
all
time.
day.
Yeah,
Awesome.
exactly. Then the next day you'd wake up with that weird, disgusting taste in your mouth. You'd be like,
kind of a dirty feeling.
yeah, like reminds me of like battery acid. I don't know why, but that's just what I think of when I taste it. But like, when I was younger, I could do that. I wasn't like, didn't put anything up my nose for like the first couple of years of doing drugs because I was like, well, I don't want to do that because, well, then maybe next week there'll be a needle in my arm.
Exactly. When you're a kid, when you're younger,
I've never touched a needle.
That's pretty scary.
Yeah, I mean, I still remember first time I snorted a methadone. My old best friend, I'm up in his grandma's attic, and we busted up these lines of methadone, and we snort that shit, burned like a motherfucker.
Yeah, that's rough.
Jumping up and down, being like, that sucks.
But once that wears off.
Yeah, once that wore off, it's like, at first, it's like, I'm like not even high, and then so slowly started hitting me that
methadone it creeps up.
Yeah, it's a crazy drug.
It is.
So, I'm, like I said, like 15, 16 at the time. So I go downstairs. I'm sitting in the back of his mom's car because we're going to go back home. She brings out this platter of food. Them tinfoil plates that you put cake in.
Like a veggie tray kind of thing?
No. Like the round cake pan that you put inside of a cake pan to avoid sticking.
That sounds tasty.
Yeah. So she brings this out. She's like, here, don't spill this. And I'm looking at it, and I can smell it, and it smells really sweet. So I'm just looking at it, and I'm hungry. I hadn't eaten anything yet that day. It's like a little after 1 o'clock. I'm looking at this, I see this like really sweet looking soup, coming off of it. I look at it, look around, nobody's looking, take a little slurp of it. I try it. Oh my God, it was so good. So she comes out a couple minutes later, sits in the car, she's like, "You didn't spill any of that pig slop, did you?" So I got to look at it again. It's
pig
like
slop?
Yeah. Like all of his grandma's leftover
They
food
threw
from
it
the
all
day.
into the
There's like
thing?
chunks of like chewed up steak
Jesus
in there
Christ,
after
man.
looking twice. I almost fucking puked right then. So then for like the next like 6 months or so, I would think about this, man. Like every time I would just like, start wanting to puke.
Oh,
it
that's
was
terrifying.
terrible. But yeah, that was my first time getting really high. I don't remember much of that, just because it's been so long. I can imagine we were just sitting there chilling, playing video games, nodding out, having a good old time, thinking we were cool as fuck.
Oh yeah. The first time I did methadone, a friend gave me, I think it was just a 5 milligram methadone. That's the smallest dose they make. And this was before I had gotten into my addiction. I dabbled in taking a Vicodin here or there, or a Norco here and there, but nothing ever, anything regular, never. I knew what they were, and I enjoyed the high, but I'd never taken methadone. And the guy gave it to me. He warned me. He's like, "This is really strong. You might want to just take half of it." And of course, I'm not going to listen to that. I'm like, I can handle this.
Yeah, you're Superman, man.
I took the whole 5 milligram pill, and it took a while. I took it orally, just took it, and I want to say like 40 minutes to an hour went by before I felt anything, and I was like, man, this stuff isn't what it's cracked up to be. Then it hit me, and I was high for almost 2 days straight. I could not believe how
You
strong
wake up
that
the next
methadone was.
morning,
Still
try to
feeling
stand
it,
up,
dude.
kind of dizzy.
Yeah. And it's wild because once I developed a tolerance in my addiction, I went back to taking methadone and started taking it regularly, and it never got me as high as it did that first time. And
Yeah, it never will.
Yeah, and that's the problem with the tolerance thing and overdoses. People keep trying to chase that first high that they got, and you're never going to get it
back. If somebody had told me back when I was younger, if you ever try heroin, you're never ever going to get high. You'll get high, just nothing will ever compare.
Nothing will get you that high
told me
again.
that, I would have never touched the shit.
Exactly.
Man. So, like, basically, if you enjoy getting high, I'm not going to say go do it, but don't ever touch heroin because you're never going to feel that again.
It's a killer, man, and it's terrible shit. It'll turn you into a monster. Even the pharmaceuticals will over time. The one thing I do remember what I wanted to say now, it was we were talking about alcohol. It's really weird how even alcohol addiction is acceptable in our society. They don't look at alcoholics the way they look at people that are addicted to opioids.
No, they just look at him like, oh, he's a little bit drunk, it's okay, come back tomorrow, and
Yeah.
they'll give the guy a beer again.
Exactly, and sometimes it's even comedic or funny that
Right.
people are alcoholics, and no, it's not. It's just as bad. It's terrible what alcoholism can do to people if they can't control it. I have no problem with people drinking, and drinking is cool and great in its own right, but when it becomes a problem, it's a problem. I really appreciate you coming in and talking and everything. It's really adds to the show. I can't thank you enough, man.
Just wish I had more to say,
Well,
man. A little bit camera shy.
Maybe we can, in the future, I'll have you come back and we could do this again sometime, because I really enjoy it. This is, for me, a labor of love, and I want to help people. I want to get the information out there to the people that really want it, the people that need it,
Well, there we go. I hope you all enjoyed listening to that. Again, I want to thank each and every one of you. So far, the show is doing great and far exceeding my initial expectations. In the past week, the show has been played nearly 100 times. Don't forget to give us a like on Facebook at facebook.com/addictionspodcast. You can find links to all of our episodes there for just about every podcast platform out there. We are now on Google Play, TuneIn, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and many more. Chances are, if you can think of a podcast directory, Addictions is already available there. Also, you can always support the show and really help us out with this creation by supporting it on patreon.com. The website for that is patreon.com/addictions. That's patreon.com/addictions. Thank you all again, and I'll talk with you next week. And as always, never quit quitting.